Long ago, I had a little torch. It was a plaything of my mind. I toyed with it. A tiptoe I would work it, peering into dark, secret corners of my thoughts. In its gleam, I would capture glimpses in dark mental waters of many little golden minnows of creative ideas. I caught some of them and used them for bait to catch bigger denizens of my consciousness. But my hook was small, and many large fish of inspiration got away. Now I carry a searchlight and no hook and line, but a net purchased with the precious gold-spun dreams of increasing understanding. With my large net of woven light, I will sweep the very ocean floor for thy wisdom. Ah, my expanding net will encompass all thy ocean. I will haul to myself all the goodness, golden deeds, and drops of inspiration, yes, to thy very self, and make all that my own. So as I said, we were at the coast yesterday, some friends and family and I, and along the beach there at Otter Crest, a beautiful beach perched high atop a fir tree, we saw a bald eagle. And this beautiful, majestic bird was sitting there, and after a little while, a pair of crows came and began swooping down at it, as they sometimes will do, and pestering this beautiful bird of prey. And I was reminded of something that Sri Ramakrishna, the great saint from India, once said, and this isn't to pass judgment on the crows, maybe they had good cause or intent, but he said that to observe the crow, kind of an analogy, he said, a crow is intelligent and clever and resourceful, but it cannot but help feed on filth, or in this case, pester an eagle. And he was likening the crow to the mind and the negative tendencies of the mind, intelligent and resourceful though it can be, to dwell on negative things. And this can also be applied to the world, where there's a lot of negativity that is constantly seeking to draw our attention and our energy and pull us down. And yet, there is so much beauty. As Yogananda said, why look at the drains of life when there is beauty all around us? And yet, there is this negative tendency. And we have to want to change and see positive goodness everywhere. I thought of another story on the heels of this that's attributed to the great philosopher Socrates that I'm certain is not historically accurate, but it makes no difference to the anecdote. And so it goes that a friend or a student of Socrates was hearing some rumor, and he came running to his master and said, "Master, I have to tell you about this friend of yours." And Socrates said, "Wait. First, I have to ask you 3 simple questions. First, is what you have to tell me good? Is it positive?" And the man said, "Well, no, not exactly." And Socrates said, "Second, is it true, what you have to tell me?" And the man could only shake his head, "No." Finally, he said, "Is it useful? Is it helpful in some way?" And again, the student could only shrug and nod his head. And Socrates said, "If it's neither good nor useful nor true, then you have no business telling me, and I have none to hear it." And this is the lens through which we must act and conduct our deeds and intentions in the world. And again, we have to first want sincerely to change, to do better than badly, surely, but more than that, than we're presently doing, which is probably quite good, but we have to want more. We can do better. Like St. Augustine was supposedly once prayed, "Lord, make me good, but not yet." And there's another naughty little boy who was overheard praying in church, and he said, "God, if you can't make me into a good little boy, don't worry, I'm having a good time like I am." So, again, we have to sincerely want to do better, and we can, and we have the tools to do better. But again, if we look around us at the world, it's not convenient, we could say, and it's not necessarily always encouraging us. And so we have to look within and look to those sources of inspiration and divine light, which do lift us up. As Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda's guru, said, this world is inconveniently set up for the literal practice of ahimsa, as it's mentioned in the reading of nonviolence. That the world around us, it's not really possible to conduct ourselves flawlessly, but our deeds, what we do, our intentions, our thoughts, are preceded above all by our consciousness. And we do have the power to change that. If you recall, when Yogananda in Autobiography of a Yogi was with his master Sri Yukteswar, he went to swat a mosquito, and he withheld, thinking, ahimsa. And Sri Yukteswar said, why didn't you finish the job? And he was surprised. Yogananda said, Master, do you advocate taking life? And Sri Yukteswar said, no, but the death blow had already been struck in your mind. And so he said that it's important for us to watch our thoughts and our intentions and to cultivate higher attitudes and ways of moving through the world. And it's not always easy. Yogananda also had a little deer. Some of you remember the story. That was his beloved pet. And I don't know how he came to have a pet deer, but he loved this little thing, and it grew very ill and lay dying. And Yogananda loved it so dearly, he prayed desperately for its life. And it held on, although on the brink of death. And God heard his prayers. And yet the deer came to him, the spirit of the deer came to him in a dream and asked to be set free in what we call death, but which we know and Yogananda knew in his heart was freedom. And so it was that he released this attachment in this little story of this deer in order for it to die and to be free, because it was its karma, it was its destiny to be free. And as I said, the world around us, if we look at the social and political upheaval and the news and social media, it's obviously not going to help us, to encourage us, to inspire us. And so we must look within. Yogananda said of the great Saint Anandamoyi Ma, when he went to visit her in India in 1935-36, he said, Anandamoyi Ma, she was illiterate and unlearned, but she was illuminated with divine wisdom and love. He said, Anandamoyi Ma, in her simplicity, has offered her soul allegiance to the Lord and has thus solved the single human problem, establishing unity with God. And he said, man forgets this simplicity, befogged by a million issues. And it's true, we are befogged and beset by a million issues in the world. But there's only one solution, one problem, and one solution, which is to seek unity with our higher self. And when we think of doing goodness or thinking good thoughts, we don't do this because it's convenient or makes us look good or even feel good, which is true. But we need to do this because it's the right thing to do, because it brings us in tune with our higher self and with God, which is oneness, which is everything. Sister Gyanamata, Yogananda's foremost woman disciple, said, do what is right, whether you feel like it or not. She said, let the little self whine if it will. And it will whine, and the world, again, around us will reflect back to us less than goodness. But it's all the more cause for us to live for unity, to live for God and share divine light. If we look at the lives of the saints and the masters, they're instructive of how to conduct ourselves, our deeds, our intentions, our consciousness in such a way to bring us in alignment with goodness, with God. And the highest way we can do this in an outward mode, not only in activity, but also in meditation, to bring it out of meditation, is to see God and serve God everywhere, in everything. And as the disciples of Christ saw after his passing, that the Christ consciousness was everywhere, is everywhere. That all of us, like the saints who came long after Christ, Mother Teresa and Francis of Assisi, Yogananda said, study the lives of the saints and meditate on them, especially those in our line, meaning not just in our lineage, but those who had a deep inner practice, similar perhaps to Kriya Yoga, as well as being outwardly saints. But that these great saints manifest this oneness of God everywhere and in everything. There's a beautiful example from the life of St. Francis of Assisi when he encountered a leper. And he was out traveling alone and crossed paths with this man who had contracted leprosy and was disfigured, and he was repulsed by the sight and the smell of this diseased person. And yet, summoning all his courage and compassion, he not only gave whatever little he had to this person, but he embraced them and even kissed them. So great was his love for Christ in this man. And as he turned to take his leave, the story says, he looked back and the man was gone, and he felt the presence of Christ. And so too we can see and feel Christ consciousness, God, in our loved ones, in those we serve, in our work, in activity, in meditation. One of my all-time favorite quotes from the Bible, from Matthew, is probably one you know as well. I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, you gave me drink. I was sick, and you cared for me, and so on. And the disciples asked, Lord, when did we do these things to you? And Jesus replied, whatever you have done to the least of my brethren, you have done to me. And this is the highest truth of God consciousness, that God is everywhere, in everything. And by expanding our awareness through meditation, through these practices and techniques, we can behold God everywhere and be in tune with his goodness. And it will come to us just as sure as we are channels for that goodness. We will see it manifest in our lives. Over the years, over lifetimes, we will evolve to grow in this goodness of God. And above all, this is a teaching of raising our own consciousness. This is an inner practice of raising the energy up the highway of self-realization, up the spine in meditation, into the higher chakras or centers of awareness. Last week, Nayaswami Pranabha was talking about the allegory of the Mahabharata and the Pandavas being the forces of light, of goodness in this amazing epic tale of good and evil that's always happening within us, in our own consciousness. And that the Pandava brothers who represent these forces of good, of light, they actually reside within us, represented by the spinal centers, the chakras. So for those that know them, Nakula and Sahadev represent the lower chakras, the yamas and niyamas. Again, right conduct, restraints and observances. That the great warrior Arjuna represents fiery self-control at the Manipur center in the spine. Bhima represents pranayam and divine love of the heart. And Yudhishthira is calmness in the battle of life. And there's a story of Arjuna, the greatest of all warriors in the world, that when he was training with the guru of all the great warriors, Dronacharya, who represents our habit, our mental tendencies and patterns that we ourselves are responsible for, that we create these patterns of our own habits. And so the guru is simply our own higher self, represented by our tendencies, is training the warriors, those parts of ourselves that are fighting for goodness. And Arjuna, being the greatest of all warriors, was in a line training in archery with all the other great archers. And they were firing at a target at a distance, a little wooden bird in a tree. And as Drona went to each of the archers, as they strung their bows, he asked them before they could fire, "What is it that you see?" And the archers would reply, "Master, I see the bird in the tree," or "I see the wind moving across the leaves," and "I see the bird perched on that branch," and so forth. And each time he would say, "No, you may not fire. You may not fire." And of course, he came to Arjuna and asked, "What is it that you see?" And Arjuna said, "Master, I see the eye of the bird." And Drona said, "What else do you see?" "Nothing, Master, I see only the eye of the bird." And such was his concentration and the power of our discipline and self-control, that to focus one-pointedly upon the goal of higher consciousness, represented by the eye of the bird and the spiritual eye in our own consciousness, in our body, in meditation, in activity, that he said, "Of course, you may fire." And he loosed the bow, which represents concentration and meditation. And as Yogananda said, that one of the very greatest and fastest ways to make spiritual progress is simply to keep our attention here at the point between the eyebrows in all our activities, of course, in meditation, but that to always remind us to raise our energy and our awareness, that to harm another is to harm myself, to do goodness in the world is to do good by my own higher self and to be in tune with goodness. And all that comes from having this heightened awareness and consciousness. So this is the one problem, the one solution to everything that's happening in the world around us and in all those parts of our own self. And as I said, it is not easy. It takes great courage and compassion and, yes, self-discipline. But the rewards are great and limitless. And the highest teaching above all is to love God, because my intentions, my thoughts, my deeds, they won't be perfect. It's inconveniently arranged in this world. And my conduct, as Sri Yukteswar said, human conduct, is ever unreliable until anchored in the divine. That if, as long as we are making a spiritual effort now, then everything will come all right and improve in the end. If we stay in communion with God as much as we can in our lives, raise our heart's energy with love for God, then we will, in time, be free. Yogananda said the highest teaching, the highest action above all is this love for God, that especially to get to know God in meditation, and that then we can rise above all merits and demerits and be one with his infinite freedom and joy. We'll have another song.